All right, so principle 4, a balanced diet has all 6 tastes in it. We did a taste experience in our last workshop, but I want you to just remember when you taste different foods, the flavors affect you, right? Sweet, sour, and salty are the ones most common in Western diet. People eat those ones the most. Especially if you're eating anything processed, it's gonna basically be those 3 flavors. And they all kind of taste the same. If you go to Chuckarama, all the food tastes the same pretty much, right? If you go the fresh stuff, you're good, but if you're eating anything that's like processed or cooked there, it's all just really similar. It's very heavy, but typically it's more of that sweet, which is the heaviest of the flavors. But when we add in the bitter, the astringent, and the pungent, that's like the taste that just like makes things pop. Pungent is a tricky one to understand. Think of it as anything that is spices. So you open your spice drawer, that is pungent. You are looking at pungent. So if you feel like, oh, I need to add all these flavors into my diet, because that's a healthy, balanced diet, just make sure you're spicing your food. We never want things to be bland. Each dosha can have a little bit of variation on how much spice is good for them based upon their own fire element. So which dosha should have probably the least amount of spice? Pittas. If you give a pitta a whole bunch of spicy food, watch out, okay? Was at a sushi restaurant in Vegas, and I think I got the only piece of that sushi roll that had a pungent spice. I don't even know what it was. But I know that I thought I was going to die, and I probably drank 2 full glasses of milk to balance it, right? So I was bringing in this sweet cooling to balance this fiery heat that was killing my mouth. And I couldn't eat for the rest of the night. It totally ruined the whole dinner because of that pungency. Everyone else was eating it, and I like to think I got the only pungent bite, but it's probably just that I don't do well with spice. It makes me too heated. It hurts my mouth. Can't eat it. So those are examples of that one. So when you know your qualities, so we want to start, if you know the qualities within you. So we just talked about the different qualities of each dosha. So you can say, okay, what's my predominant dosha? What are the qualities that match that? And then we want to start looking at where am I out of balance. So maybe right now it's the end of winter, it's been snowing a whole lot, and it's been really cold and dry, it's been windy. Maybe typically this is a fine time of year for you because you have enough fire. But if all of those outside things are affecting you, so you're feeling more dry, maybe you've had a little bit of constipation, then you say, I have my vata's out of balance. That's the air that's moving in me. I'm a little out of balance right now. So we would go, well, what are the qualities of vata? Well, they're the light and the dry and the cold. So now I want to balance that imbalance before I worry about my own dosha. That's where this gets a little complicated, because when you look online and they'll have food plans, and they'll say, here's your kapha list, your vata list, your pitta list. Those aren't plans that we always eat forever. That's like a recipe or a prescription, is a better way to say it. That is your prescription to bring you back to balance, and then you're going to eat differently once you're back in balance. Okay? And the third thing we look at, we'll talk about that more, so don't worry, is the qualities of the foods. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand, like, how do you know when you're out of balance and like the balancing is like eluding me and trying to understand that.
Okay. We always start, the symptoms are our roadmap to what is out of balance. So tell me a symptom, something that you experience regularly that you're comfortable sharing. Could be a mental thing, like an emotional thing where like I'm angry all the time, or I have anxiety, or I get overwhelmed easy, or I'm just tired, or I mean, it could be something simple like that. She's like, I'm totally in balance right in this moment. I can't think of anything.
Yeah, I don't know. Just, yeah, like maybe I know.
Okay, so let's say, let's tell a story about Malia. This is all made up, guys. It's totally pretend. Okay, let's say a story that she got up and she kind of had an okay day, but then she got to work and things got a little crazy and heated and she had a fight with a coworker. I don't even know where you work, if any of that could even happen. Okay, we'll pretend. So she got angry in that moment, and then she's gonna go home and she's gonna have dinner. So let's say when she gets home, she's still feeling quite angry and frustrated, right? So there's like all this emotion happening. First off, we want to deal with that emotion and bring it down a little bit, because if you eat when you are in an emotional state, your food's not going to digest very well. So probably the first thing that we would recommend is something of a practice, like a breathwork practice that will calm you down. Maybe alternate nostril breathing would be great. So you go sit in your closet and hide from your family and just be by yourself for a minute, or your roommates or whatever, and you're sitting there and you're going to breathe for a minute. So you're calming things down in the nervous system first, so that you can make a good choice about what you're going to eat next. Okay, so that's important. You got to get that emotional part, if it's an emotion that you're dealing with, under control first. Then you're gonna go choose food and say, okay, I need something that's cooling. I am not going for spicy tacos tonight. We're gonna maybe make a soup that's gonna have ingredients in it that's gonna be more calming to me. So I might make it with coconut milk, like as my base, right? And I'm gonna add in a little bit more heaviness to the things. I might throw in some sweet potatoes. Because that sweetness, think about that feeling of anger. Being sweet and being angry, totally different feelings. Like when you're sweet and kind, you're different than when you're being like angry and feisty. So you could bring in something that's sweet, like a sweet potato, and it's got the density and the heaviness. You could throw in a little bit of vegetables, but then you can throw on some spices that will help to cool you off, which we'll actually talk about specific spices and what they do. But cilantro would be a really good one to put in there. You could throw a little bit of fennel in there. So you choose foods that are the opposite of the qualities of your imbalance. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, it takes practice, and it's something you don't want to stress out about and go, oh my gosh, every single meal I have to do a self-assessment. How am I feeling right now, and what should I be eating? Because that just is way too stressful, right? It's more an overall thing. Like if you're experiencing this emotion on a regular basis, you would definitely handle it through your food. Otherwise, you would just go, you know, I tend to get heated, so I'm gonna always throw in some stuff that's a little more cooling in my food. Soups are a good way to do it because you can put different ingredients in and then top it with stuff that's specific to your dosha. And your family member or friends, whoever you're eating with, can top theirs with something different, and you start with the same base. So that's a nice way to eat that. That at least start to uncover that a little bit. And
so
if
you're
it's
just thinking about like, you know, what's wrong and
yeah.
Okay.
And instead of, I think it forces us to face, especially if it's an emotional thing, it forces us to face it. Like you can't just go, I'm gonna just eat to stop that vibrational energy of anger in my body. And that's something that I've had to learn not to do. Because when I get upset, I would just like immediately want junk food.
I think knowing the symptoms of your particular dosha type when it gets out of balance is really helpful too.
Yes.
So when I'm
Yes.
out of balance, I'm angry, critical, judgmental, AF. I mean, but you know, if I've eaten something that's too fire producing, I'll get indigestion, gas. You know, and then for that matter, if I'm eating anything and I start sweating, it's too hot. You know, so like Indian food, I mean,
You have to be careful with
you
it.
have to like
Mhm.
mild, and they still can't make it mild enough sometimes.
You're throwing coconut milk on the side. You're like, yeah, throw that in there. That does help. So when you know that certain things are, like vata things that go out of balance, they tend to go more towards like anxiety, insomnia, constipation, and physically joint pain, anything that's affecting like there's air and gas. If you get gassy, that tends to be vata unless it's really stinky gassy, and then it's pitta.
Overwhelmed, I think, too.
Yes.
is big for-
Feeling overwhelmed, because we all deal with stress different, right? But if stress comes in and you get immediately, you're like, oh, there's 3 things that are facing me. I'm done. I can't even face them. I can't do any of it. Like I'm just overwhelmed by it. That's vata emotion coming in. When your mind starts to spin or ruminate on something, if you had a conversation with somebody and it didn't go the way you hoped, and so you sit and replay it and you replay it and you replay it. I should have said this. I should have said this. I could have done this. That would have been better. That's vata. Okay, see, it's the air, that motion moving through you. So in that moment, you could say, okay, I need to do some grounding. And you can do it through yoga practices, you can do it through food. Food is the fastest, but if you're super upset and you feel that in your gut, you want to calm yourself a little bit before, or you're just going to be eating upset, it's not going to digest, you're going to feel worse. It's not going to do what you want it to.
So
Yeah.
I'm definitely vata. You just described me. But I am like attracted to like popcorn and chips. Like chips are my guilty pleasure. So
Yeah.
am I just feeding that imbalance and
Mhm.
myself for junk food?
Yep. That is our normal tendency. Our tendency is to seek things that are already like us, which then increases those qualities in us, putting us out of balance. Yeah. But there's ways that you can eat those things and eat them with other things that are like oily and heavy and moist. Like put ghee on your popcorn. Don't ever eat it dry. If you're gonna eat chips, have it with a really warm, heavy soup and eat it with it. So you just start to learn, oh, I'm not gonna do that all by itself because then I'm gonna feel even worse, but if I add it with something else, it'll do a little bit better. But yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
Oh.
I didn't mean to cut
No, you didn't. You're good.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So how could you use food for insomnia?
Okay. So I'm going to introduce you. Well, Adam will ask because he's like, she just told me all these things. Okay. This is my favorite spice to add into what I call golden milk. This is nutmeg. Nutmeg is a nervine sedative, natural, but it helps to calm. So when you can't sleep, your nervous system is firing, right? So it's out of control. Now when you can't sleep, what's happening here? Because it's different for everybody.
Yeah, just like I'm feeling awake, like lots of thoughts. Like
Are
almost like anxiety is
Uh-huh.
producing the insomnia.
Okay. Is it thoughts about past or future?
Past.
Past thoughts?
Mhm.
Okay. And is it ever planning things or it's more ruminating?
Ruminating.
All right, yeah, it's definitely Vata. If you were planning something and like thinking about, oh, I got this day coming and I'm so busy and I got this, that's Pitta, just so you know. So when you guys have those kinds of insomniac moments, that's your fire of trying to organize and process everything going too hot. But we can actually deal with both of them pretty similarly, which is nice. So first thing I would say is nighttime rituals are so important. So in Ayurveda, we try to bookend our days with our morning rituals and our night rituals. And a lot of times we're better at the morning, and nighttime we tend to not do as well. A lot of us are doing the electronics, and that's something that we have to kind of wean off of before bed because that'll get your Vata going. But if you start thinking, okay, probably about 5 or 6 p.m., I'm creating an intention for how I'm going to sleep tonight. What I do between now and 10 is going to greatly affect whether or not I stay asleep through the night. And it's going to take sleep training. It's going to take some time to fix it. But the first thing is create yourself like a little ritual. Some things that are good to do at night would be putting warm oil on your feet. You do Brahmi oil, is really good for that. It's BHRAMI. It's usually got a sesame oil base, and then they add Brahmi powder to it, which is an herb that helps to decrease the movement of the nerves in the body. But I love it. It's so nice. So you can buy it on like Banyan Botanical. It's a really great website for buying Ayurvedic Banyan Botanical. Yeah. So that's something that I recommend always doing at night. You could do a little bit of a yoga nidra. So it's just a short, something like a practice. You guys talked about that today.
Yeah.
That's like one of the best ways to get in touch with what's happening inside the mind and calm it down. Is doing yoga nidra. Even just having like, I know I always do this, but that quiet time before you go to bed, drinking warm golden milk, it's like the best thing ever made. Adam, can you testify about golden milk? Okay, he's gonna testify right there. It's amazing. It's called golden milk. I should send you all the recipe. So good. So you can do, if you don't do dairy, you can do basic like almond milk, or you can do a coconut milk. Raw organic milk is good if you do dairy. Oh good, he has a recipe for you right there. Look at that, we'll pass it around. You can do different herbs in it, but the way that this works, when you take milk and you warm it, it can nourish the deepest layer of your tissues immediately. Typically food takes several days to get to the deepest layer, and that's another section of Ayurveda that we won't talk about tonight. But when we drink milk, it gets deeper, and so it can immediately calm the nerves. We add nutmeg in it. You put a little bit of ghee, which is heavy and very warming. It's almost, when you drink this, it's like it fills all those spaces where everything is just going crazy, and it's not just physically, you feel it emotionally. It's probably the best thing that you could do to help yourself sleep well at night, as well as take out electronics. No TV after if you're gonna go to bed by 10, which you should, no TV after 9. Just take it away, no phone, nothing. Just calming, very calming activities. You're trying to slow everything down, and that time of day, the environment is trying to help you, but if we don't assist it, we're just gonna throw ourselves right back into the whole crazy. So, yeah, so there's some things on that. But that's why, so when you wake up and you're like, oh, this is happening, you know what, just if you feel like you need to get up and put your legs up the wall, just do some breath. So it's coming back to some of your yoga practices, but this and having your dinner early so it has time to digest before you get towards your bedtime. So 5 or 6, yeah, you want to be eating earlier and lighter. A lot of times we don't realize it, but we're staying up because our body's trying so hard to digest what's going on in the belly. And our mind has to digest things too. So if we're doing things that are requiring a lot of mental activity up until we turn that light off and go to sleep, it's still trying to work on that when we're trying to fall asleep. And then you might fall asleep, but you won't stay asleep because you aren't in that restful state. And the time of day makes a difference as well.
And the temperature of the food, not like spicy, but like warm.
Yes.
For some reason, I don't eat warm food.
Yeah, well, it's your Vata side that's not wanting it. Vata's like the dry, the light.
Yeah.
Yes, we want warm. Dinner time should be warming anyways, because that warm is what brings us heaviness into the kapha time of night when we're sleeping. So there's a lot of aspects you can look at. You can look at what am I doing mentally with my activities, what am I eating before I'm going to bed, what time am I eating, and am I allowing myself that rhythm to move into sleep? Because you really can heal your sleep where you sleep really well, and then you go out to a jazz game and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do now. I just am so tired. And I don't nap, so I'm like, okay.
When I was all Vata initiated and also having problems with insomnia, another thing that helped me too is journaling before bed. Just gets it all out of the head, you know.
It's good. So I have like 10 things. Now don't try and do them all at once because that'll make your vata worse. Choose one. One thing. Okay. There you go. That's you know, okay. So going into what do you eat being important. When you eat to your tastes, meaning you include all those 6 tastes that we mentioned, the sweet, sour, salty, bitter, pungent, astringent in your meal, you're balancing the qualities that you need. You just get those tastes in different quantities, okay? Because some tastes are going to be more healing for certain doshas and some tastes will be more healing for others. This is where it starts to become more simple when you're preparing meals because you can look at it and go, okay, I've got something sweet here. I've got like rice that's sweet. And I've got something that's salty because I added salt. That's the easiest way to add salt. If you're not eating processed foods, just get Himalayan rock salt. Just put a little rock salt on there. You're all good. There's your salty, okay? Or if you had like olives, that would be a little bit salty. Or if you did seaweed in there, that would be salty. And then you get your sour, easy one, lemon. Little squeeze of lemon. And it is amazing how it makes your food pop. You don't need a whole lot. Like you could be having a rice dish and you just go, and oh, it tastes so much better. So you got your salty or your sour in there. And then is where it gets trickier. You're like, oh, bitter, pungent, astringent. How do I do that? Pungent, add your spices. More spices for kappas. Moderate amount for pittas. Vatas are pretty moderate as well. Okay? But kappas can go crazy. Spice that thing up because they're trying to get movement in their body from all that stagnancy. So they can just put lots of hot and fiery in there. So that part's fun for them. Okay, and then when you get into your bitters are things like your greens, like collard greens, spinach is bitter. It's actually not hard to add them in, just wilt some spinach and throw them in if you're doing like a soup. If you're gonna have a salad, you're gonna get them anyways, but I recommend if it's not for lunch that you always wilt the salad first. Don't have a big green raw salad for dinner because you're not gonna digest it and you're not gonna sleep as good and your body's gonna be like, oh, thank you for making my vata go crazy. If you're gonna have a raw foods, eat it at lunch because at lunchtime your digestion's the hottest. It's gonna be able to process it the very best. Okay, so let's look at each of the tastes separately here, and this will be helpful for you to see. And I want you to be thinking as we look at these, what taste am I tending to eat the most? And then we're going to look at what doshas that helps, and could that be explaining maybe any imbalances that you've been experiencing? Okay, so we're going to personalize it there. So our sweet taste, made up of earth and water, and the qualities we want to focus on, it's heavy, moist, and soft. The effect on our doshas. So if we've got earth and water, which dosha is it most likely to increase? Kapha. Yeah, because kapha is also earth and water. So we're adding 2 plus 2, we're making 4, okay? We're getting it bigger there. But it's going to decrease vata and pitta because they are opposite qualities. So if you're having a lot of vata or a lot of pitta emotions, sweet is good. Make sure you have some rice, you can have some nuts, you can have some milk, grains, all of those things. There's some examples there of different sweet tastes. So we're not talking like, you know, ding-dongs or cookies. So we're doing natural sweets. We get into sour. Sour's got fire and earth. Which doshas do you think that's going to affect? Which one's it going to increase? If it's already got fire, we know right away. Pitta and kapha, because the earth from the kapha, the fire from the pitta, right? So it starts to kind of make sense. These are actually useful if you're trying to start implementing this, to just put a little list and write all the tastes, which we'll do here in a second, but you write all the tastes and then just write it's going to do this to this dosha, because then it helps you when you're preparing a meal. You're like, well, I'm already feeling a little bit hot today. I'm not going to put a lot of sour, I'm just going to put a teeny bit in, but maybe somebody else in the family needs more. Their dish, they can add more to that. The more things you can have aside that you add in once it's done cooking, the easier it is to balance it to yourself and then other people that you live with, okay? So, and sour's really good for vata. Sour's very nice for them. We get into salty. Salty is water and fire. Who's that going to be good for? Who's that going to be good for? Who's it going to decrease? Like which dosha is going to be? Salty is good for vata because they're already dry, so they need water, and they're already cold, so they need a little more fire and a little more heat in there, right? So I have a client that wants to salt everything all the time, and nothing tastes like it's salty enough. And she's always adding and adding and adding, and she was told by doctors, you can't do that, that's not good for you, whatever. So she has been so vata out of balance pretty much since she was a kid due to some traumatic things that happened when she was young. And she's not vata dosha, she is very pitta, a little bit of kapha. But she's so out of balance and has been for so years, and all of her ailments are all vata related. And so she said, well, my doctor said I shouldn't eat so much salt, but she doesn't have any blood pressure issues. Like, it's not affecting her body in a negative way. And I said, in this case, your imbalance is drawing you to salt because it's bringing you back into a level of balance. So good, do the salt, add the salt, do it to your taste because it's something your body actually needs to balance out the vata. So the taste buds really do tell us what we need. We just have to kind of like listen and overcome any addictions we have to like sugar and processed foods. Okay, so that's a whole nother subject. So we get into pungent. Pungent is hot, 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 hot. Okay, so remember we talked spices, fire, air. So it's got a lot of heat going on there. Who's that going to be the very best for? Who needs to have it hot? Kapha needs the heat. Bring on the heat. And it can increase vata and pitta if you have too much. You got to keep it low moderate with those spices. Bitter. Bitter's the opposite end of the spectrum, okay? Pungent is super, super hot. Bitter is the most cold of all of the flavors. So who's it going to be the worst for? Well, bitter's cold. Who's it worse for? Vata, yeah. So it's not, vatas don't want to have tons of bitters. And yet, it's our vatas that tend to love those big cold salads. They're like eating all this bitter, and then they don't know why they're like anxious all the time. Like, well, maybe you should like not eat that. Maybe you should have a sweet potato. That would be so much better. And I can't. I have to go to spin class. Vatas have a lot of this energy, right? Like you just have to realize sometimes like the pitta who always wants to go to the heated power yoga probably could use a little bit of cooling yin, but that's not what they're naturally drawn to. They have to like learn that that's good for them. Okay.
So, because I think I'm vata, but I have very low energy. So how am I balancing? I'm not high energetic.
It would be that. Well, have you ever been? Have you ever been a high energetic
Not
person?
really.
You probably have more kapha in you than you think, because kapha tends to be that more slow, like just kind of a little bit.
Yeah, I think I'm realizing that.
So you have a little bit of that together. So, and it's fun to know we're all three. We just will have ones that lead, and in the season it's happening for that dosha, because winter is vata, you might see more of your vata things come out. Spring starts to come, and you might see more of the kapha stuff. You're like, I don't know, this spring cleaning business everybody's doing. I am not spring cleaning. This is no, everything's fine. It's totally fine. Vata or kaphas get really complacent. They're like, it's totally fine. Everything's good, and they'll kind of like take things more than they should too. Like if like let people. It's not that they let people treat them badly, but they don't get upset when maybe they could say, hey, boundary. Here's a boundary. You're stepping over my boundary. That's a kapha thing.
Because I feel like my body is more vata, but maybe my mind, emotional, mental health wise.
And that can happen too. And it's typical that they're more aligned, but sometimes if they've been out of balance for a long time, they can seem like they're more separate. And then once you start to get some of that imbalances corrected, you'll see, oh wait, I do have a little more of those. It's just I was so being this way for so long, I didn't realize I actually had these other characteristics. So it's kind of fun. It's like uncovering these layers of onions. You're like, who am I on the inside? I don't know. Let's figure it out. It's kind of fun. Okay, and then the last one is that astringent. Astringent takes the moisture out of everything. It's earth and air. So it's not going to be very good for who? Who do you think would not like astringents? Kapha doesn't like astringent because they like water. Like who's it gonna be worse for? It's the worst for vata because it's drying them out. It's taking even more water out. So think if you already have someone who's dry and then you bring in astringency and you're stripping it. Think of like when you do the astringent, the toner stuff on your face, and it like, and your little pores just like squeeze up, but your face feels so tight and dry and kind of like not nice afterwards. That's that astringency, picturing that inside your body. If you're already dry, let's say you're constipated and then you eat astringent foods, and then suddenly there's no moisture in your poor little colon and it can't move anything out. So it's just gonna hang out there for a long time and be miserable. You need to go the totally opposite in those cases, right? And bring in stuff that's really sweet and moist and heavy so you can get all that moving.